Now, Protestantism, in my opinion, is going after the weak points is kind of like shooting fish in a barrel because, from my vantage point now on the other side of the Tiber, there's so many logical holes. I couldn't remain Protestant. I could not stay an intellectually fulfilled Christian and an intellectually honest Christian and remain Protestant. And I know you know my story. I won't rehash it at great length. But the 2 points that really just hammered me as a Protestant and made me absolutely have to consider Catholicism were, number one, Luther's contention that the doctrine of justification by faith is the doctrine on which the church stands or falls. That is just the be-all and end-all of Christian faith. And, of course, my engagement with Christian history as well as Scripture led me to the conclusion that that couldn't possibly be true, right? The data from the Bible and Christian history is just overwhelming that Luther's doctrine of faith alone is an utter innovation. And so much flows from that in Protestantism that it's not hard to get back to that bedrock issue. And the other one, of course, was the doctrine of the Bible alone, Scripture alone. And I'll never forget the day that, I'd already sort of given up on justification by faith alone, and I knew I had to systematically examine other Protestant doctrines. And I thought, okay, well, what about the biggie? What about sola scriptura? And I asked myself this question. I said, why do I believe that? Why do I believe in sola scriptura? And as soon as I put the question to myself, I realized the only reason I believed it was because it was what my tradition taught me. And the irony of that revelation has never left me, right? That Protestants who allege to decry tradition as a lesser authority or no authority, in my judgment, base their entire doctrine of authority on their own tradition, right? Luther's rejection of Catholic teaching is the only authority they can point to for their doctrine of the Bible, because the Bible itself doesn't affirm its own status as a rule of faith. So it's a logically self-contradictory, incoherent doctrine, and a person can't hold it, I think, and hold it knowledgeably and really be intellectually honest. And there are so many other problems of biblical interpretation and the formation of the canon, and you just go on down the list. It just is a house of cards that's going to come down. So those are the weak points that I've pressed on. You've probably heard me tell the story of the Protestant friend of mine who's now a Catholic, to whom I asked the question, you believe in the Bible as the rule of faith? And he said, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, how do you know the difference between a dogma and an opinion? Those things on which all Christians have to agree and those about which they might legitimately disagree. And there is no principled way to answer that question if you're a Protestant. Because, they all have an answer to it. They will assert some principle, but that assertion is always arbitrary. They'll say something like, well, you only have to agree on the stuff that's relevant for salvation. Okay, well, how do you know what's relevant for salvation? It's a circular argument, right? And I put that question to my friend, and he realized that he didn't have an answer, and about 6 months later he became Catholic, right? Because for a Catholic, the principled answer to the question is the teaching church declares. That is an objective point of reference to define the content of Christian faith and practice. The teaching church declares. That's how I know the difference between dogma and opinion. And lo and behold, it's an authority that Christ himself instituted when he said, go make disciples of all nations, teach them everything I've commanded you, and I'll be with you to the end of the age, and whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven.